Welcome to the At the Races flat season preview show. We're turning our attentions in this section to the older horses. Do check out on the website in association with the Tote, the 3-year-old fillies and colts sections. We welcome along Kevin Blake and Matt Chapman to look at the older horses. And Kevin, which older horse are you most looking forward to seeing on track in 2021?
Oh, God, there's a great bunch to pick from, Martin. And the one I actually picked out, just to try and be a small bit different, I'm actually looking forward to seeing Lupe Fernandez back at the highest level. It was a bit of an early horse, I suppose, for a lot of his career. Had a big reputation early on. Came up short more often than not, it's probably fair to say. But he was knocking on the door last season in international Group 1s. They were trying to figure out his best trip, but they've set out this season to make him a miler. He reappeared at Leopardstown the other day, and I thought he was really good now. And I thought everything about it suggested that he's doing things right now. It was important that he settled over the mile. He did just that, quickened up really well, put some, they're not Group 1 horses, but he put some good solid stakes horses to bed by 5.5 lengths. And I think stepping back up to a mile, something like the Queen Anne, you could see him taking a step forward this season. I remember seeing him, before the Chesham as a 2-year-old, and you just see this big, scopy 2-year-old, and you always think, God, you're going to be better with time. And it's been a bit of a wait, but it looks like this might be his season to fully fulfill his potential. Visually very impressive, Kevin, but would you not be a little bit concerned about the quality of the opposition that day? Look, they were good, 105, 108 type horses, but when you're beating them by 5.5 lengths, on your seasonal return, I'm not going to crib him too much. There will be much better opposition in his way if he goes to Royal Ascot or wherever he goes next. But we saw last year that he's well able to lay into Group 1 horses, and if he can bring his form forward a couple of lengths, that'll put him bang there in the mix and hopefully winning one or two with them. OK, he's sure that Matt, if you're looking at the mile, isn't in the same league as a miler as Palace Pier.
Yeah, it's interesting what Kevin just said there. Lopi, for me, in fact, I had a conversation with Aidan O'Brien about him thinking he'd run really well one day, and he ran terrible. I think he's one of those horses that fools you against lesser beasts. Really what you've just been saying, Martin, intelligently for you. I think he likes to boss the bad horses. And when he does that, he looks like an absolute monster. But the moment he's asked to really work, he's a bit like Kevin Blake. He almost forgets some people. And you were talking about horses I'm looking forward to, like Tarnawa. I can't wait for Tarnawa. Blakey wouldn't have even heard of that because it's trained by Dermot Weld. And if you go to the 1,000 guineas section of this preview, you will hear that there are horses of Weld that basically Blake has never even heard of. Anyway, yeah, coming back to the original question, I mean, look, you asked Kevin a question about the horse he's most looking forward to. I mean, he's tried to pick something out clever there because there is only one horse in the older section that we all can't wait to see, and that is Love. I mean, I know it's obvious, but she was such a monster, and we were denied those clashes with Enable. Everyone wants to see Love. I actually think Tarnawa, I think Aldera, and I think Mogul are 3 other horses that we can't wait. But there she is. I mean, this is the horse that could dominate European racing in 2021. She might just be one of the greatest fillies in the history of the turf. She might be. She looked that good. Coming back to the minors, as I like to do, I like to bring it back to the question that I was answered via the M25. And Palace Pier stands out, doesn't it? I mean, as the minor with a bit of juice in the ground, there aren't going to be many people who go against Palace Pier. The Revenant will be popular with some as well. I think Top Rank of James Tate. Here's brilliant action. I think Top Rank of James Tate is a horse that might just provide Tate with his first Group 1 winner. And rest assured, that is a trainer going to have a Group 1 winner sooner rather than later. And of course, you do have to bring in the fact that some of the Guineas horses might come through as well, hopefully, because as we've discussed in the 2,000 Guineas section in particular, there is a big pot of horses that might just progress. But in general terms, Palace Pier is the one to beat. And I think he's a great horse for a 10 to follow. He's likely to run in all the top miling races. He's likely to go to France for the big miling races there, where the competition might not be quite so strong. So I think he's a horse that not many people will leave out of their 10 to follow, I'd have thought.
Well, speaking of 10 to follows, Kevin, if you've had a chance while Matt was talking to look up Tarnawa and just familiarise yourself with her form, would she go into your 10 to follow?
Look, she's potentially, one of the nicest fillies around this season. Dermot Weld minded her, I suppose, last season as a 4-year-old. Certainly could have gone for the Arc, decided not to, went for the Prix l'Opera instead, and went and won that. And she probably would have had a great chance in the Arc if she'd run in it. But she went to America then and took on the boys in the Breeders' Cup Turf, which is what we're seeing now. And she was very good, in fairness, beating Magical. And we all know about Magical. So, that stamped her as potentially a tip-top filly, getting the filly's allowance. You'd imagine, I think it was slightly surprising that she's coming back as a 5-year-old. It wouldn't be typical for the Aga Khan to do that. So that says plenty in itself. So hopefully they're rewarded for bringing her back in training. And she looks like a filly that, could be a big competitor in, big races like the King George against the boys, races like that. And yeah, hopefully she has another big season.
And Matt, we've got to throw in here Mishrif as well, has been out to Saudi, has been out to Dubai. He won over the 1.5 miles in Dubai, but I just wonder whether they think that he was running on empty in the closing stages. John Gosden this week talking about the Eclipse, the Juddmonte International, 1.25 mile races for the mid to back end of the season for him.
OK, so I'm going to throw one in the mix here. There are horses that I think are suited to European racing and world racing that aren't, sorry, I should have said are suited to world racing rather necessarily than British or Irish racing. And I wouldn't put Mishrif in my 10 to follow for the reason that it appears that he is now going to be campaigned in the UK, mostly in Ireland, etc., with the Eclipse being given as the next race for him. And I think he's one to take on in this country. So, look, what he's done is incredible, but I'm not absolutely convinced he's going to be as good over here as he's being on the world stage. I can be made to look very silly here when he just everything.
Despite him being a classic winner over 1.25 miles in France?
Yes, yeah, because I don't, as you know, the free is not really a classic. It's a sort of made-up race that isn't really a derby, as we all know. So the answer to your question is, yeah, look at Martin Kelly know-it-all. You put Mishrif in and let's see if you win the 10 to follow. Let's see how good your list is.
Well, we know that Matt's throwing Mishrif in the bin. He's not in the 10 to follow. If he's in yours, we'll head on to the Tote website and get your entries in. You've got to get them in before 11 o'clock on May the 1st. 10 horses, points for wins and places. There's bonus points in there as well. It's only £5 to enter and prices right down to 500th. Tote.co.uk/10 to follow. Going back to Mishrif, Kevin, would he be in your 10 to follow, this European classic winner who also does it on the world stage?
I think he'd be on the short list. I don't know, would he make the final list? He's shown great versatility in recent starts, in fairness to him.
I agree with Chapman.
I don't know if I do. I don't know. You might have got to the right conclusion, but I don't know if your methodology is too sound.
Well, we've looked at
look, I thought he gutted it out well. It's interesting that John Gosden is talking about going back to 10 furlongs with him, and he'd have to be on your short list. But there are other candidates there, and I'd throw one into the mix from the very same yard, actually. Lord North. He won out in Dubai as well. Over 9 furlongs, which is the shortest trip he's tackled for some time. And on his day, he's capable of showing a big turn of foot. And I'd actually be really interested to see him over a mile. I don't think that the mile division is all that deep at the minute. And I think Lord North would have the pace to do it. I'm just hoping he's okay. I think that there was a report that he had blood on a nostril after his win in the Dubai Turf. So hopefully he's A1. And we get to see him back out soon. But he'd be one that would also be on my short list for the 10 to follow. And it's just interesting because, of course, the 10 to follow is something that we've all enjoyed. And I know they do run a charity 10 to follow competition, Martin. I don't know if you're aware. And Matt, of course, gets involved in this, and I get involved in this. And I'm just looking at the leaderboard here for the current jump season. And based on Matt's position all the way back down in 38 of 90, I don't know, viewers, if Matt would necessarily be the right one to be taking advice from in this competition. I just and for the record, I'm in 6th at the minute. So in terms of the two to listen to, there might be some form in the book there.
I mean, look, I am British and proud to be British. It hasn't been a great jump season for British people. So, of course, you're going to get lucky as an Irishman from time to time. But, you know, you got lucky. At least I've heard of Dermot World.
Well, one thing I don't think you have in your 10 to follow list, Kevin, is an Irish sprinter, because in terms of the good ones, there isn't any.
That's probably fair enough. I think we're a little bit light, as we often are. I think in all the divisions across both codes, I think sprinters is possibly the one the Irish tend to struggle most in. We have had some wonderful exceptions, of course, in the last couple of decades, but it's not something maybe we consistently produce. And in terms of the division looking forward to this season, it could potentially be going through just a bit of a transition phase, especially with regard to 5 furlongs, because, you know, Batash has been ruling the roost for a good few seasons now. Wonderful horse. But we did hear the news in the last few weeks that he did have a bit of a setback during the winter. He had to have a little bit of surgery. He might not be certain to get to Royal Ascot. Hopefully he does. But, you know, he is getting that bit older now. I think he's 7 now. So if it was such a thing that Batash isn't quite the horse he was, you know, that very much opens things up. And, you know, I'm just looking at the anti-post market for the King's Stand, and, you know, the market is really dominated by potential international raiders, you know, like Golem Pal, Bivouac for the Australians, you know, so there's domestic resistance might be a little bit light on the ground, and we'll be looking for maybe some of the exciting 3-year-olds that are coming through with the aim of the Commonwealth Cup, perhaps to step up into the breach there and then mount a bit of a home defence in the sprint division.
And what about the home defence, Matt? We've got Oxted in there. We've got Art Power, who's going to be a 4-year-old. He could step forward again this season. And even, despite being 7 years old, Dakota Gold ended the season last year on a real high.
Well, I've got to say, my learned colleague has summed it up very well. This is a very, very weak division. If you're Wes Ward or you're an Australian, this is the year to try and travel. Obviously, it's not in some ways because of the pandemic, but it is so weak. I mean, Batash may or may not run at Royal Ascot, as Kevin has said. We all know that an on-form 5 furlong Batash is the best sprinter in the world. He's a really hard horse for the 10 to follow, isn't he? Because if you leave him out and he comes back, you know you've left out a horse who's basically going to win a Group 1 sprint somewhere. But you could put him in and he doesn't even run again. He's a very tricky horse, Batash. He could even be the deciding factor at the end of the season of who's won the 10 to follow. It might be the person who's left him out beats the person who put him in, or vice versa. But I think Kevin's right. The 3-year-olds are key. But of course, from that point of view, for all that everyone seems to love it, the Commonwealth Cup has mucked up that theory, because in years gone by, you'd say, oh, well, something you didn't say in the Guineas might just come through at Royal Ascot in the King's Stand or the Golden Jubilee. But of course, those horses will now go to the Commonwealth, so they won't even go or be aimed at these 2 big sprints. So a lot of waffle, basically, to say that I do agree with Kevin, and who wouldn't?
You're showing your age now, Matt. It's been called a Diamond Jubilee for an awful long time.
Well, at the moment, Kevin, you're more likely to have a golden or diamond jubilee than me. That's fair to say.
And Kevin, what were your thoughts on Oxted turned over on his comeback? He's been out to Saudi on the dirt, of course, and come back to the UK and got turned over at Newmarket.
Yeah, you do worry about him a little bit. He did have a couple of issues at the back end of last season. His 2 runs, his last 2 have been a bit disappointing. You don't want to leap to conclusions and judge him too harshly just yet, but he is on the back foot a little bit now, having potentially looked like one that could be a big one in the division for quite some time. He does have some questions to answer now, I think.
It's Ken. I think it's another reason to put Thunder Moon in the list, because Thunder Moon could win the 2,000 guineas, but if he doesn't, he could end up being the really good 6 furlong sprinter for me. So another reason why, if you go to the Colts section of this preview and you listen to the intelligent words that I have to say there, you might be swayed by Thunder Moon.
Are you? No.
I'm just focusing on the older horses. This is the older horses segment, isn't it?
That is true. That is true. Speaking of which, older horses, 7-year-old Stradivarius, Matt, is the reign of Stradivarius over?
No, I see absolutely no reason why it should be. There is opposition around at the moment, but on his day, he is the rarest of rare stayers who brings in the quality of a proper stayer with a turn of pace. And when he delivers that to absolute perfection, there isn't a stayer out there at the moment for me who can match him. He's just got that turn of speed, and as Kevin knows as well as I do, turn of pace, whatever distance, is the thing that sets horses apart.
Would he be in your list, Kevin?
Oh, he's a small bit of a tricky one. He's maybe not quite as he wouldn't quite split opinion as much as Batash, but it's not a dissimilar boat. You know, he is that bit older now. You know, on his day last year, look, he looked as good as ever. Of course, he put up a stunning performance in the Gold Cup. In fairness to his connections, you know, rather than kind of pot hunting for the rest of the season, they did try something different and try him over 1.5 miles. It didn't work out brilliantly, but fair play to them for having a go. You'd imagine he'll probably stick to staying trips this season with the Gold Cup as his big aim. And look, if he wins that, he probably justifies being on your list. But, you know, then you don't win 10 to follows necessarily by doing the obvious thing that everybody else is doing. And if you did want to try and be a bit clever and try to get ahead of the game a little bit, Trushan definitely is interesting in the staying division. Trained by Alan King. You know, he progressed up the ranks last season, and he was very, very good on Champions Day. Look, I know we didn't see the real Stradivarius or anything like it, but Trushan was deadly. Like I was really impressed with this because he was too free the whole way. You know, he shouldn't have been able to finish off the way he did, given how freely he raced. But he made up his headway very easily and was very strong inside the final furlong. So, you know, I know the ground was soft there, but I don't think a sounder surface will be an issue for him. And I think he's going to be a big player in the division this season.
Well, that's the thing, Matt, isn't it, with Trushan? Is he not just a soft ground plodder?
Yes, but that's not a bad thing to be in the staying division, to be quite frank. But yeah, I think ground is relatively key to him producing his best. And all the big horses weren't really in that Ascot race. But look, he's got potential. Santiago would have real potential in the Ascot Gold Cup. And Subjectivist, of course, has done good things and was sensational, to be quite frank, in Dubai, although I never really rate that Dubai staying form when it comes back to the European picture. Princess Zoe will certainly go in some lists for Tony Mullins. Wouldn't it be amazing if she kept winning? So there are horses to have a look at in the division, but I still think Stradivarius is top of the tree. I think it will go in most lists. And actually, Kevin Blake is wrong. Most 10 to follows are won by relatively obvious horses, bar perhaps one or two. But look, Stradivarius will certainly be in my list. Stayers, most stayers don't run that many times. Perhaps you're looking at 3 or 4 runs. So you don't want too many stayers in your list, I would say.
And just remind us, Kevin, of the standings in the 10 to follow when Matt's talking about how to win them.
Yeah, he's in 38th position at the minute. I see a few interesting horses there. Lost in translation, Santini. Oh, yeah. We'll stick to the flat, but yeah, making for interesting reading.
And Matt, just worrying about the sort of the level of form in Dubai when it comes back to the UK, Kevin. What did you make of Subjectivist? From the front end, he was great that day and he was good in France as well last year. We're just saying, Kevin, as regards Subjectivist, what did you make of the Dubai form? Of course, not forgetting, of course, he had that great run in France at the back end of last year.
Oh, he was very good in Dubai, wasn't he? It's like he progressed very well through last season, but Dubai did seem like a big step up. You know, he was given a very, very positive ride, and he just kept rolling, didn't he? You know, Dubai form can be a little bit tricky at times. You like to see them come back and produce a similar level. I suppose before you fully buy into it, it's a different set of circumstances out there. But in fairness to him, his form at the back end of last season, you know, puts him in the mix. I think he'd need to take another step forward to be at the very highest level of stayers over here. But, you know, he's only a 4-year-old, so it could still be forthcoming from him.
And of course, Mark Johnston, synonymous with the stayers, going back to Double Trigger, not just subjectivist, it's also got the very close relative of that horse, Sir Ron Priestley.
Yeah, but I just think those horses set it up for Stradivarius. They're just what Stradivarius needs. I mean, I've said it once, I'll say it again, though. You know, in years to time, we're gonna thank Mark Johnston for the way he runs his horses, because he makes races be a true test, and that is exactly what Stradivarius wants. So, to be honest, the subjectivist for me just helps Stradivarius rather than hinders him.
Okay, that's a bit harsh to say that Mark Johnston's legacy will be running pacemakers for other trainers, Matt. That's a bit harsh. Jeez, he's trained thousands and thousands of winners. I thought that would have been a better legacy for him.
Thanks for your input, Kevin.
And of course, if you're betting through the Tote website, you can get an enhancement of 10% on your bets. Head to the Tote website, and this is on all UK and Irish racing, single and multi-leg bets as well. And just using an example, Burrows Saint in the National, SP of 9-1, the Tote paying 11.33. Let's give you the older horses to follow from the team then, starting off with you, Kevin. Older horse to follow? Don't say Lupe Fernandez.
Yeah, I did. I got it upside down. I went with my one to follow at the start. So yeah, it's Lupe Fernandez for reasons stated at the beginning of this piece.
Well, I think we'd best move on, Matt.
Only an Irishman could give the horse to follow, which is meant to be at the end at the start. Well done, Kevin. You've read the script well. Look, I want to mention two horses here. One is my one to follow. The other we haven't mentioned, but I think is a really good 10 to follow horse. So the really good 10 to follow horse is Alpine Star, who I think is absolutely ultra tough of the tough. Seems to just run and run and run. Can go a mile and a quarter, no problem at all. And is a Niarchos horse who might well end up in the Breeders' Cup, etc. I really love Alpine Star. The horse to follow, Mogul, who I think is on the verge of coming of age, has always promised to be an absolute monster. And I think this season will be it.
Yeah, he'll certainly improve through the season as well. Despite being labelled as a pacemaker, I thought subjectivist could be the one to break through. Stradivarius getting on in years in terms of the amount of racing he's had. So Lupe Fernandez for Kevin, Mogul for Matt, and subjectivist who wasn't just good in Dubai, he was brilliant in France at the back end of last year as well. He might just slip the field in some of those big staying events. Well, many thanks to Matt and to Kevin. That was our older horses section. Do check out the 3-year-old colt and 3-year-old filly section, all available through attheraces.com.